I always thought love was enough. I believed that if I gave everything, my heart, my time, my loyalty, he would never leave. Our marriage wasn't flashy, but it felt safe, comfortable. Every morning, I'd wake up before him to make coffee just the way he liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of milk. He barely noticed. Still, I kept doing it, convinced that love was in the small things. I'd wait for him to smile, to laugh at my silly jokes, to reach out and hold my hand like he used to. But those moments grew fewer. At first, I blamed work. He came home later, distracted, tired. I tried to be patient. I thought maybe if I dressed up more, cooked his favorite meals, planned little surprises, he'd come back to me in the way that mattered. But nothing changed. He was always on his phone, eyes locked on the screen, mumbling responses like he was miles away. I asked if something was wrong. He said everything was fine. I wanted to believe him. Then came that Tuesday. I remember it down to the smell of rain on the pavement. I had left early from work to surprise him with dinner. I walked in smiling, carrying his favorite takeout, ready to try again. The lights were off. The silence felt wrong. I called his name, but there was no answer. I stepped into the bedroom and saw it immediately. His side of the closet was empty. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I saw the note on the dresser. Just one line. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. No explanation. No warning. Just gone. My knees gave out before the tears even came. I sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the space where his clothes used to be. My hands trembled as I picked up the note, reading it again and again, hoping it would change. It didn't. He didn't even have the courage to say it to my face. That hurt more than the leaving itself. All the years, the memories, the promises, it all ended with one sentence. I spent that night in silence. No calls, no texts. Just me, the echo of his absence, and the overwhelming feeling of being discarded. I didn't cry at first. I just sat still, numb, as if my body was trying to make sense of the emotional earthquake that had hit me. I kept thinking, was it my fault? Was I too much? Not enough? I replayed every conversation, every fight, trying to find the moment it all started falling apart. But there was no clear line, just slow fading. By midnight, the food was still untouched on the table, cold and forgotten. Just like me. The thought lingered in my mind like poison. He chose to leave. And suddenly, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was shattered. But I didn't know yet that this was the beginning of something else. Something I never saw coming. The days that followed were a blur. I stopped counting them after the first week. I barely moved from the couch. I didn't shower, didn't eat unless I absolutely had to. The house was quiet, too quiet, and every corner felt haunted by his memory. The way he laughed from the kitchen. The sound of his keys hitting the table. The dent in the cushion where he used to sit. I felt like I was living in a museum of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. People called. I didn't answer. They knocked. I pretended not to hear. My world had shrunk to the size of my pain, and I didn't have the strength to let anyone in. I replayed his note in my head like a broken record, hoping that somewhere in those few words I'd find a clue. But there was nothing to hold on to, just silence and 1,000 unanswered questions. Then came the truth. A friend reached out, gently, cautiously, as if afraid I'd break even more. She told me he had been seeing someone else. A woman from his office. Younger, unmarried, full of energy. Someone who, apparently, made him feel alive again. That phrase stuck with me, alive again. As if I had been killing him with my love. As if years of loyalty and comfort were something to run from. The humiliation was worse than the heartbreak. It wasn't just that he left, it was that he replaced me so easily, so publicly. People whispered, pitted me. I hated it. I hated being the woman who was left behind. I hated the look in people's eyes that said, poor thing. It felt like a scarlet letter written in betrayal. I started writing, not because I thought it would help, but because I didn't know what else to do. I poured everything into those pages, my confusion, my rage, my grief. It became a place where I could scream without anyone hearing. Therapy felt useless. Talking didn't work. But writing gave me a strange sense of control. That's when I met him. Daniel. He was a regular at the library where I worked part-time. We had spoken before, nothing deep. But one day, he stopped at the counter and said, "You look like you've had a long week." I didn't know what to say. No one had really seen me in days, not like that. It wasn't a pickup line. It was just human kindness. We started talking. Slowly. Just little exchanges about books, coffee, the weather. There was no pressure, no agenda. He didn't ask personal questions, didn't pry. He just listened. I found myself looking forward to those brief conversations. They were the only real moments I had in a day that otherwise felt hollow. I wasn't ready to feel anything. I still wore my wedding ring. Still checked my phone, hoping for a message that never came. But Daniel's presence reminded me that I still existed. That maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to stay broken forever. Daniel didn't rush me. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give. His calmness made space for my chaos. Over time, I stopped pretending I was okay. I let myself be seen, messy, uncertain, wounded. He didn't flinch. If anything, he seemed to understand the silence between my words better than anyone ever had. Still, I held back. Part of me felt like I was betraying my marriage, even though it had already been abandoned. One afternoon, he invited me to a local art exhibit. I almost said no, but something in me wanted to feel human again. We walked through the gallery, not talking much, just sharing quiet glances. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. He pointed to a painting of a woman standing alone in the rain and said, "She looks strong, even when she's breaking." I felt like he was speaking about me without needing to ask for details. We kept spending time together, coffee here, a walk there. It never crossed a line. Not physically. Not emotionally. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth was clear. I had started to feel again. Not just hope, but desire. To be touched, to be loved, to be wanted. The guilt clawed at me. I wasn't divorced. I wasn't free. But I also wasn't chosen. And that reality kept echoing every time I remembered the note he left. One night, it poured. Daniel offered to drive me home. I hesitated, then nodded. The car ride was quiet until he said, "You don't have to keep waiting for someone who already walked away." The words hit harder than I expected. My throat tightened. I didn't respond. I just looked at him, and he looked back without pressure. There was something honest in that silence, something raw. When we reached my house, I didn't want to go inside. Not to the memories, not to the echo of emptiness. I turned to thank him, but instead, I kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. It just happened, soft, slow, full of every emotion I had buried. It wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about reclaiming something I thought I had lost forever. Afterward, I sat alone in my room, the ring still on my finger. I took it off and placed it in a box. Not out of anger, but acceptance. It was time to stop holding on to a ghost. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't the one who left. I had waited. I had hoped. But he never came back. And in his absence, I found someone who saw me. That night wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about finally giving myself permission to live again. Not because I needed someone to rescue me, but because I realized I deserved to feel alive. The unthinkable wasn't loving someone new. It was choosing to stop grieving someone who had already let go. Weeks passed, and I began to feel the shift inside me. The house didn't feel so heavy anymore. I started rearranging things, moving furniture, taking down old photos. Not out of bitterness, but to make space for who I was becoming. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for an apology or closure that would never come. I was giving myself what he never did: attention, care, and truth. I heard from him once. A short message. "Hope you're doing okay." It made my hand shake. Not out of longing, but disbelief. After all the silence, all he could offer was a sentence so casual it felt insulting. He didn't ask to come back. He didn't explain why he left. Just a hollow check-in like I was someone he once knew, nothing more. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I wasn't the same woman he walked out on. Daniel, and I never rushed into defining what we were. He knew I needed time, and he gave it freely. It wasn't about possession or labels. It was about presence. He was there when I needed someone to talk to at midnight. He brought me soup when I was sick. He listened without trying to fix me. I found myself laughing again. Real laughter, not the kind you fake to seem strong. One day, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked light. Not healed completely, but healing. Not bitter, just awake. I had lived for too long thinking love meant sacrifice. That if I gave more, things would fix themselves. But now, I understood that love shouldn't require disappearing to be worthy. And I had disappeared for far too long. My ex never came back, and that was the best thing he could have done for me. His absence gave me space to rediscover myself. I stopped measuring my worth by his affection or attention. I started making choices for me, simple ones like learning how to cook for one without feeling lonely or booking a solo trip, just to prove I could. As for Daniel, he never tried to fill anyone's shoes. He wasn't a replacement. He was something entirely different. He reminded me what connection could feel like when it's grounded in honesty and respect. I didn't rush into a new relationship, but I let myself be open to what was possible. Looking back, the unthinkable wasn't falling for someone new. It was surviving the betrayal without losing myself completely. It was facing the storm and choosing to rebuild instead of hiding in the wreckage. I never imagined I'd find strength in such a painful ending. But I did. And maybe that's the real story. Not about a husband who left. Not about a new man who appeared. But about a woman who was forced to start over and found something better in the ashes. Not just love, but clarity. Not just romance, but peace. I lost him, but I found me, and that's a trade I'd make again.